Hi, everyone. How are we doing? All right, great. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I had an entirely different speech prepared today, but we celebrated a historic victory yesterday, and I'm going to let our amazing next speaker talk to you all more about that. But believe me when I say it is truly a testament to the power of activism and organizing. I believe storytelling is a very compelling form of activism that goes unnoticed, and I'm very excited and honored to share my story with you all today. Before I do that, I'm going to ask you all two questions. I'm on a clock, so please participate and shout out your answers. What comes to mind when I say Los Angeles? Highways, people, traffic, pollution. Now, what do you all believe belongs in a community? Parks, love, water, care, tree, transportation. Notice how not a single person said an oil well. The harsh reality is that the city of Los Angeles is the largest urban oil field in the nation, with approximately 500,000 Angelenos living a quarter of a mile or less to an active oil and gas well. I grew up 30 feet across the street from one. This oil well, Elenco Energy, operated with 21 underground wells, and it was surrounded by 9 schools. In my personal experience, I got really sick. What began with a nosebleed, my nosebleeds became so severe I could no longer sleep in my own bed. I would sleep in a chair to prevent choking on my own blood at night. I developed body spasms, and my mom would have to carry me from one place to the other, heart palpitations, and I wore a heart monitor for several weeks. Headaches, stomach pains, I developed asthma. That's something I'm always going to have to live with now. And at the age of 19, a month after my 19th birthday, I heard the words no one ever wants to hear. You have cancer. I was diagnosed with stage 2 reproductive cancer, and I was forced to choose between my life and my reproductive system. When drilling for oil, not only is your health being impacted, but your safety is at risk as well. Many people don't know that these urban oil wells operate under such immense pressure that valves have to be manually opened every 10 to 15 minutes to prevent an explosion. I was 10 years old when I learned this. And every 10 minutes to 15 minutes at school, I would look up at the clock and I would whisper to myself, I hope they open the valves. That was not only my reality, but the reality of my entire community. So what do you do when your community is under attack? You stand up and you fight back. I'm gonna ask you guys one more time. What do you do when your community is under attack? Stand up, fight back. That's exactly what we did. We created a grassroots campaign in our community of South Los Angeles. We began door-to-door knocking, raising our fists in the air, demanding our basic human right of breathing clean air and opening the windows in our homes. After organizing of 4 years in what felt like silence, we were very fortunate to capture the attention of the Los Angeles Times. They wrote a story about my community, and that story captured the attention of former U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer. She came out and pleaded with Elenco Energy to cease operations, and I'm very proud to say they temporarily closed, a move that was made permanent in 2020. As a community, we were fighting 3 monsters: the oil industry, the broken regulatory system people of color constantly fight, and the archdiocese without attacking the faith. I say the archdiocese because Elenco Energy operates on land that is leased to them by the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Yeah. As someone that has gone to Catholic school her entire life, first grade through senior year of high school, it's because of the beliefs and morals that they instilled in me that I feel like it is my job to call them out on being hypocrites. Just because the oil well operates on land leased to them by the Archdiocese, it does not make them holy missions. And it is unfortunately another way that the church is abusing children, and we cannot let that continue. People often ask me why I fight, and I fight because I believe everyone has the right to breathe clean air regardless of their age, their gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, religion, or zip code. Clean air is a basic and fundamental human right. I fight so my story ends with me. I dream of a world where urban oil extraction is only read about in history books. I dream of a world where no activist is born out of survival at the age of 9 like I was. And so no future 19-year-old is forced to choose between her life and her own reproductive system. This movement is like a puzzle piece. That's what my mom says. And each and every one of you have an integral part to play in this movement. Without you, this puzzle is incomplete. Your unique abilities, whether it's researching, funding, storytelling, we need you to join us in this movement so we can solve the climate crisis. So my question to you all is, will you raise your fist in the air to demand an end to environmental racism and establish environmental justice, or will you wait until it is your life on the line? Thank you. Before I walk off stage, I have the immense honor of introducing our next speaker, someone who truly needs no introduction at all. Her unwavering commitment to justice, her activism, and her ability to portray characters on screen is an inspiration to us all. I am very honored to call her my friend, my role model, my mentor, and my grandma. Everyone, please join me in welcoming to the stage the one and only Jane Fonda.
As many of you know, well, I'm not going to say it. This issue of people living next to oil wells has gone on for as long as I've been alive, and I was born here in 1937. I spent the first 10 years of my life here. There were no freeways, there was no air pollution. There were a lot of oil wells, but it hadn't yet accumulated, and there were a lot of people living next to oil wells, and they were getting sick, as Nayeli described, and we fought this for a long, long time. And finally, Governor Newsom, 2 years ago, signed a bill, Senate Bill 1137, it's easy to remember because it's the year I was born, that did something that no other state has done. It created a setback within which no new oil wells could drill, a setback of 3,200 feet. You know, Texas has a setback, it's 500 feet. The scientist says, no, it's 3,200 feet is about a kilometer, and that is not entirely safe, but it's appropriate. And he did it. We have the largest setback law now in the country, after decades and decades of not having any setbacks at all. The bill also demands that the oil wells that are already in communities be made safer, pollute less. There was tremendous celebrating. This win was because activists like Nayeli all over California have fought and fought and fought for this to happen. A week later, the oil companies started gathering signatures, lying to people, saying that if Governor Newsom's bill passed, it would cause people to get sicker and our gas prices to go up, complete BS. And they managed to get a ballot measure that we would have been able to vote on in November. And last night they pulled it. They dropped it. It's a victory of the many over the money. And the bill went into effect yesterday. No new oil wells in communities around California. Children will be able to breathe cleaner air. I have to say that Nayeli was a real, she was our superpower. It made a huge difference for people to hear her story. But this victory is proof of what can happen when we work together. It was the most amazing coalition that made this happen. 400 organizations, frontline activists, artists, philanthropists, and celebrities. And we won. And it's very consequential. Because all over this country, there are people like Nayeli who are fighting for their lives. Commerce City in Denver, the Gulf of Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, people are dying. Whole communities are being eradicated because they live in the presence of terrible terminals that spew out toxins. And usually these, you know what the oil companies call these communities? Sacrifice zones. Sacrifice zones. And they don't care. The CEO of the largest liquefied natural gas, LNG, company in the world, Venture Global, was quoted as saying, "Oh, we love hurricanes. They help us get rid of the people." And when you see the terminals lining the coasts and the communities that have just simply disappeared, you understand what he's talking about. Cancer Alley. You want stories. Go to places like this and see what's happening to people. Pennsylvania, Michigan, all over the country, this is happening. And what's so important about our victory is it shows that with a proper coalition and a lot of activists, we can beat fossil fuels. Their demise, the green energy future it's growing exponentially. You may read today that sales of electric vehicles are down, or Republicans don't like wind turbines and so forth. The prices of green energy is falling so fast that it becomes irresistible. The market will bring this on. It is happening no matter what. What we have to do is stop fossil fuels. You can do everything else that you want to do, but we have to stop. I'm not talking about turning off a spigot overnight. We have to stop all new drilling and fracking and mining. Then we have to cut our emissions in half, and then slowly, gradually phase out until by mid-century we're off fossil fuels. It can be done. The scientists tell us it's not too late, but we have to act fast, and we have to be very brave. And because of that, this is an election year, that's what I'm going to talk about very briefly, and I'm sorry if it's going to upset anybody. This election in November is an existential election. Who we elect as president will determine whether there will be a livable future for our children and grandchildren. There's no question about that. We know that Donald Trump invited all the heads, the CEOs of the oil companies down to Mar-a-Lago and said to them, if you give me $1 billion, I'll kill the EPA, I'll do away with the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act and so forth. There was only one thing that they really cared about. Last January, Biden very bravely issued a pause on exporting liquefied natural gas from the United States. The United States is the #1 exporter of gas and coal. We don't use it here at all. Exporting it means our gas prices go up. That's the truth. Our gas prices go up, and people around the world will be poisoned. It's primarily methane. Methane is 80 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. Not only dangerous to the environment, dangerous to people's health. It's lethal. And it is billowing out of terminals down in Texas and Louisiana, hundreds of feet high, clouds of methane, and nothing's being done about it. Putting a pause on the export means that they can't drill anymore because there's no place to send it. And all the oil company CEOs wanted to know is, are you going to lift the pause? That's what they care about. Because they can't get the money to build new terminals if there's no export guaranteed. They'll stop drilling. So this is what Biden did is critical. It's not sexy. It's not on the front page. Probably most of you never even heard about it. But it's a big deal. Texas and Louisiana and the drilling in the Permian Basin of Texas represents the biggest, they call it a carbon bomb. If it's allowed to continue the way it is, it will release a gigaton of carbon dioxide and methane. It's the biggest, most dangerous for the climate thing anywhere in the world. And the people, those of us who have committed ourselves 100% to fighting this, that's where everybody is focused. Anyway. I've, like many of you, I've been an activist for a long time. I've gotten arrested a bunch of times. And so have you. And we've marched and protested and written and lobbied. And it's good because we persuaded a lot of Americans that this is a real crisis. But it hasn't gotten us the legislation that is commensurate with what science is demanding. Not even the IRA came close. And why? because so many of our elected officials, Democrats as well as Republicans, take money from the fossil fuel industry. They've bought off our elected officials. Too many people in this country are elected because of corporate greed. They don't work for us, they work for corporations. And we're at the end of the line. This has to stop. I started a PAC 2 years ago because I saw what the Republicans did for decades. With Koch brother money, they infiltrated school boards, school districts, health districts, city councils, state legislatures, supervisors, mayors. They elected all these people, and the Democrats didn't notice. It was under the radar. And it's gotten us into a lot of trouble. We have to reverse that. We focus, my PAC does, and I urge you all to look down ballot, vote for sheriffs and county executives and city councils and state legislators. Our state legislature has more empty seats this year than ever before. A lot of people termed out, a lot of people didn't want to run again. The Republicans are putting a lot of money to try to get control of our state legislature. The reason we haven't been able to get the kind of legislature that a Senate Bill 1137 represents is because they've been bought off. We have to change that. So please, this is my plea. In November, when you vote, vote with climate in your heart. Vote down ballot. I don't know who the Democratic presidential candidate is going to be. But whoever he is or she is, I don't care what you think, vote for it. Man or woman, black, white, whatever it is, vote for him, her, it, they, them. And also, here's another thing, Google Project 25. This is a 900-page document written by 400 conservative people, many working for the Heritage Foundation, that is a blueprint for fascism. I have read part of it. I started to shake. There can be no mention of climate. The EPA is gone. Clean water, clean air, gone. The Department of Education is gone. It's granular. The dismantling of the United States government as we know it, and any concern about climate and the future is gone. This is what we get if the orange guy gets elected in November. And so, you know, I have grandkids that don't intend to vote. A lot of people do. You've got to convince these young people. Sitting it out, not voting, or voting for Bobby Kennedy is voting for fascism. And we can't allow that to happen. And I know that last night was not a great time for Joe Biden, but we're not electing a debater, we're electing a president. So whoever it is, if it's him or somebody else, please try to get everybody you know to vote. We can't sit this one out. Thank you very much.
I'm going to let her have this applause, then I'll announce. And now, please welcome to the stage our next speakers, photographers and founders of Sea Legacy, Christina Mittermeier and Paul Nicklin.
Thank you very much.
How about another round of applause for Ms. Fonda? She's amazing. Thank you, Jane.
We need an entire world of Jane Fondas and we would be okay. We were just with Jane in Aspen Ideas Festival and she gave an incredible 1-hour performance as well, and this is just very, very inspiring. But thank you for having us here tonight. I'm going to speak for a few minutes and then Christina. I really am a product of my upbringing. My family moved from southern Canada, Saskatchewan, up to the Canadian Arctic when I was 4 years old. We lived in a tiny Inuit community of 190 people. We were one of 3 non-Inuit families. We never had a radio, a television, didn't have a telephone, but the ice and the snow were my sandbox, and I lived outside with my Inuit friends, and they taught me how to survive, but also with the Inuit culture, I was very lucky that you really develop your right-sided brain creative storytelling. And I didn't realize that I was learning these skills that were so crucial to my future. And I knew I was going to do something someday that had to do with protecting the Arctic, a place I loved. So I became a biologist. I worked on polar bears, wolves, wolverine, caribou, and very quickly became disgruntled by how ineffective we were with our science because it was overridden often by politics. And then I got a job with a little-known magazine called National Geographic. And I got to work for National Geographic for over 22 years. And it was an amazing journey that you had such a big microphone, and I was their climate change specialist. But most of all, I got all the hard, cold, miserable stories because I was so good at freezing because I grew up in the Arctic. But it was amazing that to be on these assignments, but really not feeling like you were being effective. You were not creating change, you were creating awareness. And it wasn't until about 15 years into my journey at National Geographic that I met this incredible woman, Christina Mittermeier. And exactly. And by then she was running an organization called the International League of Conservation Photographers. And she's like, you call yourself a journalist, but really, Paul, you're an activist. You love the animals, the species, the issues too much. And so I started to follow this formula that Christina was using with photographers all around the world. And then I started applying that with sometimes underfunded budgets from National Geographic. Christina would help us raise more money. And it was amazing on the conservation wins that we started to have. Just right here in Los Angeles, you had the mile-long drift nets that go out and all night long just indiscriminately catch whales, dolphins, turtles on a 9-to-1 bycatch ratio just so we can have swordfish. But it was a 3-year campaign that Christina helped lead. We worked with local nonprofits. We gathered the visuals. We worked with the late Rob Stewart on this project. And it took a long time, but we were able to ban these drift nets from the coast of California. We were able to thank you, we were able to get rid of the Northern Gateway pipeline that was coming from Canada oil sands through Canadian waters. That was a long project. We were able to chase big oil out of the Lofoten region in Norway, but that was a long project. And what it really takes is, as a photographer, as a filmmaker, we fail all the time. As a photographer, I fail. As a wildlife photographer, I fail 98% of the time. And we all have these little voices in our heads saying, you're not good enough, you're not going to succeed, you're going to fail, what's the point, it's going to be too expensive. You have to crush that voice in your head. This is a time to have courage. This is a time to believe in yourself. This is a time to get to work. This is the time to find the real issues that are in your backyard. There are stories all around us, stories where you can have wins and you can affect change. Because I know when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be looking at your bank account or looking at awards on your wall. You're going to be surrounded by hopefully friends and family, and you're going to have a head full of great memories and a knowledge knowing that you made this a better planet.
Well said, Paul.
Thanks, darling.
Activism works, but it only works if we all participate. If the majority of us sit it out, then it's just Jane out there screaming by herself and us freezing in the Arctic. We need everybody. And what we're facing is such a massive problem. The question that we get asked the most often is, how can I participate? You know, where is my lane in the climate fight? And there was an economist, a friend of mine, that was explaining to me, what we have is we have a runaway carbon problem on planet Earth. We have released the carbon from the bottom of the Earth and put it in the atmosphere. And as a biochemical engineer, I can tell you that carbon is a very difficult molecule to get rid of. It's sticky, and it is fat, and it doesn't want to come off. And we need to find ways to get rid of it. So he said, we need to do two things. We need to turn the tap off, and that is, we need to stop emissions immediately. And that's where 90% of the conversation is. Stopping the wells, the urban wells, you know, just transitioning to renewable energy. But the other part of the puzzle is we have to drain the top. And there's a lot of conversations about how do we get rid of all that carbon that's sitting out there killing us. Well, you know, people love thinking about building big machines. You know, you listen to the boys, and they're investing, and they're going to build a thing. The truth of the matter is that this planet that has kept us alive all this time has the perfect machinery already in place to take care of carbon, right? And it is nature. Nature is the best machine to keep us alive. The problem is that nature has been forgotten in this conversation. We have chosen our lane to be the ocean. And our superhero suit is a wetsuit. You need to find yours, but the ocean is our chosen path because it's the largest and the most important ecosystem on planet Earth. It produces 50% of the oxygen we breathe. It sequesters 25% of the carbon in the atmosphere. And until now, it's been sequestering 90% of the excess heat up there. But this year, things are finally getting so hot in the ocean. We just came back from the Great Barrier Reef and bearing terrible news. 90% of the reef is bleached. 50% is going to die. This is an ecosystem we can see from space. We're never going to get it back. So we need to act faster than ever. And the problem that we have is that the audience is not big enough, and we struggle to pitch our stories to Netflix and to Apple. You know, nobody wants to tell these stories. It's hard. The second problem that we have is that the issue is severely underfunded. To give you an example, in the United States, we are the most philanthropic people on planet Earth. Collectively, we donate $500 billion a year to charity. But it's where that money goes that is very telling. 32%, Nayeli, goes to religious institutions. We are not people of faith, but we don't criticize people who are. You know, it's just 32%. After that, health, education, arts, 1.8% goes to the environment. That includes all of the rainforest, all of the ocean, all of climate change. The ocean is the most underfunded of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the most telling part about that pyramid of funding is that it's about 2% of GDP. And that number has not changed in the last 40 years. So my call to action is figure out your lane. What part of the climate crisis are you going to address? Become an expert, just like Jane is an expert, and then wear your superhero suit. We need you out there being an activist in your lane. And the second call to action is invite anybody you know who's donating to any cause to please consider the environment in their donations. People think that climate change is another bucket that we now have to donate to. It is not. Climate change is a hole in every single bucket of all the other things that we care about. And unless we solve climate change, in 10 years, very little else is going to matter. So thank you so much. And be an activist. Wear your suit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, we're welcoming to the stage our next speaker, climate justice activist, Shea Batista.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Give it up for Christina. And give it up for Jane and for Nayeli. And to the Hollywood Climate Summit, because they have hosted an incredible, incredible space. At the beginning of this session, you saw the film that I'm working on, The Way of the Whale. And I've never seen it this big. You can imagine how nervous I was sitting up here. My cheeks got all red, and all I could think was, I never thought I would see a story that I felt I could tell myself. Ooh. And I think that is one of the main reasons why it's so important that climate activists are entering this space of storytelling at this big scale, because historically we know that our climate storytelling has been about the end of the world. It has been about the apocalypse. It has been about how many times and how many ways we've screwed it up. But let me tell you something. My community, I'm from an indigenous community in central Mexico, our stories ended when colonization happened. Our stories ended with extractivism. Our stories ended when this greed came over. And so we are in a process of reconstruction. We are already rebuilding our worlds. For us, the climate crisis is already part of a path of solutions, because we already saw the end. And I invite all of you to see the climate crisis in that way, not as this thing that we're going towards, this end, but already as a beginning for how we change the world, how we tell a better story. And how you can actually go to communities and allow them to be the storytellers. So the director came to me a lot of times, and you know, when you get invited to speak at a documentary, you usually speak for an hour, 2 hours, and you're in 2 seconds of the film. And I thought that's what it was going to be, so I didn't respond, and I was in school, full-time student. And then the environment minister of Mexico, Julia Carabias, emailed me and said, you should look at your emails. And so I did, and the first thing that I thought was, I don't want to be in 5 minutes of the end of your film to talk about how important the youth movement is. I want this to be a story where we get to co-create it, co-tell it. So the director scrapped his film, and we redid it all. Now I'm executive producer and co-writer on it. And I obviously never thought I would be anything of that. I studied environmental studies, which is one of the least popular degrees. We have 12 people in my major, in my year, so out of a school of over 2,000 each year. So you can see how small that is. But we know that that's the future, that climate storytelling and people who study the climate in all different aspects, we are going to be architects of that future and that story that we're telling. And the last thing that I will share with you is something that came to me very recently. I was thinking, because I recently moved back to Mexico, I graduated a month ago. A lot of happy dances up here. And I moved back to my country, and one of the first things that I noticed when I came back here to the US was how many times I hear less is more, whether that be in makeup or clothing or design, etc. Less is more. And I was thinking, that still means more is better. And we have this story that more is better and more is better, and more highways, more cars, more buildings, more is better. And you know what? That is why the climate crisis started. Because the tendency of imperialism and colonialism and wanting more for myself because that's better for me, that is the root of the crisis. And in my community, we have the philosophy of buen vivir, of good living. We're not looking for better, we're looking for good. What is good? Good enough. What is balance? And that is the type of stories that we need to tell, not about how we have this endless want of consuming because nothing will ever be good enough, but looking around and saying, Mother Earth is enough, my community is enough, clean air is enough and a must. And that is the experience that I had when I went to see the gray whale, that the love of a mother to its calf, the love of my mother that you saw in the screen, the love of Mother Earth to us, that is enough. So when we learn to step into what we have in the world is enough, I think that is when we find our superpower, that we don't need to wait for something that will never come because we have everything that we need within us. There was a quote that was said in 2 panels before with the screening of Asali. We don't inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. That is a very common, popular indigenous saying, and something that I will share with all of you is also this. Our ancestors, they are also the earth. The earth is our ancestor, right? The ocean is our ancestor. So even if we're not inheriting things from our ancestors that we usually think just as people, we are inheriting knowledge, we're inheriting wisdom. And that is why we owe future generations to step into our purpose, to step into our wisdom, because stories not only change the world, they shape it. So let's imagine that world that we need to shape, because that is why we are here today. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. I am so excited for my film to come out and happy to be sharing it with all of you, to tell the stories that are missing, the stories that come from us, from our hearts, from our sweat and our tears, and also all of our love. Thank you.
And now it's our privilege to introduce Emmy-nominated actress and member of Feeding America Entertainment Council, Connie Britton, and the CEO of Feeding America, Claire Babineau-Fontenot.
Hi, everybody. I guess I don't have to be that loud because I have a microphone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Oh, and I know we're doing this quickly. We've been talking a lot today about superheroes, and I am very fortunate and honored to be standing on this stage this evening with a superhero, Claire Babineau-Fontenot, CEO of Feeding America. What is Feeding America? And if you're asking, I would be so eternally grateful if you will please go home and research what Feeding America is, but I can also tell you, Feeding America is the oldest and largest food rescue organization in the country and responsible for rescuing about 4 billion pounds of food every year, but that is a small chunk of the 92 billion pounds of food that we waste as a country every year. So we've got a lot of work to do, but this organization, and I'm very fortunate to have been volunteering with Feeding America for years and be on your entertainment council. The organization is doing incredible work, and I am so thrilled to be talking about this within the context of climate and sustainability today. This is such a great area to talk about it, and I want to ask you if you'll talk a little bit about the challenge that you guys have created for yourself, because I think everybody today is talking about how we have to challenge ourselves in the climate work we're doing. So will you talk about that, Claire?
I'd love to do that, and it just dawned upon me. I was going to eschew the notion of being a superhero, and then I thought, well, maybe if I say that I am, then that means superheroes can wear high heel shoes. I'll take it. I'll take it.
You look good.
Well, you know what? I with all of the remarkable things that we've heard already today and over the last several days, I want to talk about math. So don't get too upset. Don't get too upset. I used to do finance for a living. But I think I should start by talking about some really, really bad math. That in the United States, according to recent estimates, that in 2020, about 55 million metric tons of greenhouse gases were emitted from landfills. About half were from food waste. Now, let me tell you something else that was happening in the same year. In 2020, Feeding America has a network of over 200 food banks, over 60,000 agency partners, 2 million volunteers all across this beautiful country. We provided 6.7 billion meals to 60 million people who couldn't make, well, thank you for that, ma'am, especially from you. Oh, my goodness. And they couldn't make ends meet. Isn't that bad math? That's terrible, terrible math. And the good news, though, is we can do something about it. Feeding America and our network and people like you who partner with us, we have been doing some things about it. We've already recovered 4 billion pounds a year. We have line of sight on another billion pounds. That's roughly 3.8 billion metric tons, a million metric tons of greenhouse gases. I mean, that's a really, really, really big deal. So, but we're here because we need help in order to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, I want to ask you a question now, though, Connie. So why do you help? Why would you choose Feeding America? You choose all kinds of things to participate in, but you choose Feeding America and you choose food waste. Why?
Well, a couple different reasons. I mean, one is, and I'm preaching to the choir. We're all preaching to the choir today, but it's overwhelming when you think about all of the issues and all of the need, and particularly in relationship to climate. And having an organization like Feeding America makes you feel like, oh, I know that I can go. I'm concerned about the 44 million people in the United States who are experiencing food insecurity. I am concerned that there are 18 million children in the United States who don't have food to eat. That is unjust, and we need to do something about it. Oh, okay, how do I do that? It's overwhelming. I can go to Feeding America and I can go to the church downtown and pack boxes with food that you have rescued and send it out to the community and meet the community members who we are feeding. And it's one human being at a time, and you guys are doing that work. So that's why I choose Feeding America. But beyond that, you know, we all have to step up, and you know, we're all saying the same thing today. But the time is now. We have to step up, and this is a sustainability issue. This is the ground floor of sustainability. If we have people who are hungry in this country and globally, that is a climate crisis issue, because it all has to do that it's very inequitable, and it slides straight down into poverty. And the people who are suffering the most poverty around the world in our country are the ones who are suffering the most from the climate crisis. So we have to do something about it, and you guys are doing that work on the ground floor with food insecurity.
And I was excited that I had the opportunity to be on the stage once. One reason was because I get to be next to you. The other is because I get to be in front of all of you.
Thank you.
Incredibly powerful people who can choose narratives that are game-changing for people experiencing hunger, who can help eliminate the stigma attached to hunger right now, that the status of not having resources is something that people are embarrassed of in this country. You can be a part of changing that narrative. You can also all be a part of the movement to end hunger. Go to feedingamerica.org. We've got lots of advice on how you can do that. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for clapping for me, Ms. Fonda. I appreciate that.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Claire.
And now, please welcome to the stage our next speaker, land protector and Native advocate, Jody Potts Joseph.
Drinhozo Shaleknai. In my language, that means good day, all my relations. It really is an honor to be here with you today on Tongva lands. They're unceded and traditional lands of the Tongva people. It's really good to be listening to these powerful speakers, hearing their stories, and collectively coming up with solutions to the climate crisis. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have been born to the traditional lands of my people, the Hongwichin, on the upper Yukon River near the border of Alaska and Canada. I was very, very fortunate to be raised in a time where actually we didn't have electricity for the first 6 years of my life. We lived by the land. My family was subsistence hunters and fishers and gatherers. And through that, we forged a very strong relationship with our traditional indigenous lands. And with that, that has become the power and the force behind my work as a tribal leader, but also where I am most grounded and where all of my decisions and my journey is informed and directed from. I also come from a time when the elders told stories, because I grew up in a time without electricity. We didn't have television. There were a lot of things that we didn't have. Entertainment was one-on-one visiting, personal communication, storytelling, the oral tradition. And our stories weren't just entertainment. There was always a teaching and a lesson and values that we learned through those stories to live by. And I want to talk to you about some of those values of my people, the Hongwichin. One that is super important and still is today, and I think should be a universal truth. Care for the land so it cares for you, as it cares for you. Never take more than you need. Even though we were hunters and fishers, we never took more than we need, and we never wasted anything. Respect. Respect for others, for our elders, for self, and also for the lands and our animal relatives. Humility. None of us are greater than someone else, but definitely not our land. We don't have dominance over the land. We are not to conquer anything. We are just humble beings
in this journey. Generosity, and this is something that I've been thinking of the last few days as I met with an attorney in Alaska the other day to talk about my business ventures and my LLC, and she started to talk to me about creating generational wealth. And you know, I understand that that's a thing in the Western world. For our people to have wealth is to be able to give it away. Generosity is one of the most important values of our people. To this day, when my son and our family go out hunting, we don't keep all that meat to feed our family. My son literally goes door to door, sorry if I get emotional, and feeds our village. These values guide and inform myself and my daughter, Kwana, who, sorry, is not able to join us today. Another value that I heard a lot in my life, it's somewhat of a saying and a motto and something that our people live by, and I heard it a lot growing up. Nina Kai Hoduk, our land speaks, and we must listen. When I was a young girl and I really got into distance running, I remember getting a Walkman. This is in the days of the Walkman, with my headphones and my favorite jams, and I was actually a mixtape, and I was gonna run out the door, dating myself. I was gonna run out the door, and my mom said, "Hey, hold up, take those off. You have to listen. You have to hear things around you." Nina Kai Hoduk. And I knew what she meant. I knew being present is important. I know being grounded by your surroundings and the senses that you get, but also there is a high risk for a trail runner. You have to hear the animals around you. I may hear a bear charging me before I can see it, and the same with the moose. But there's so many reasons, and those are the risks that we need to be aware of. Nina Kai Hoduk. Our land speaks. So with that, I was raised so much on the land with those values that it was very much a part of my daily life to make these observations of the land around me, of eastern interior Alaska. And some of the observations I've made may not pass a scientific academia or anything like that. I don't have data sets. I don't use thermometers. What I use is just my experience and my knowledge as a First Nations person on the land that I still live. Some of those observations are, and this is my science, when I was a little girl, swimming to us on hot days in Alaska meant putting on our life jacket because that Yukon River is powerful and it's swift. We'd put on our life jacket. I think that's the proper term. That's what we call in Alaska, might be our slang, yeah. Life jacket. We would hop in the Yukon River, and within 1 second, we'd hop back out because it was just that cold. We try to warm up under the sun. Well, today, my kids, in their teenage years, in the last 5 to 10 years, they are able to swim in the Yukon River for hours at end. And while I see my kids happy and having fun, to me, that's a bad sign. That's not a good thing. We need to keep Alaska cold. We need to keep the Arctic cold. Every morning when I wake up, I hear the songbirds. Springtime comes and I can hear the songbirds that I've heard every year for 47 years of my life. I know their songs. I know which song belongs to what bird because I've observed. I didn't look at bird books. I'm not a birder, actually. But this year, this spring, as the migratory birds returned, I heard a new bird song. And my first thought with that new bird song, other than, that's kind of pretty, is what's going to happen. Like, this is a new bird on our lands. It's not indigenous to this place. There's going to be an impact. And just most recently, I finally found that bird. It's a black bird with like an orange beak. I don't know it yet. There's a lot of other impacts that we're facing today. I could talk to you more about, the weather in Alaska, how it's warming right now. I thought I'd be coming down here into hotter weather than Alaska. I actually came down here and it's cooler than my home today. I could talk to you about the caribou, especially the caribou on the north slope, the North Arctic slope of Alaska, where there are just fields of oil drills. There's fields and fields of huge oil wells, and the caribou, the hunters, are finding caribou now with black marrow. And why do we know that? Because that's one of our food sources. And I think that the talks about food insecurity. So as Indigenous peoples that, we live close to the land, it's a part of our daily lives, it's a part of my daily life. We are facing food insecurity. The impacts to not just our food, but our way of life, our culture and spirituality is really feeling a very harsh impact from climate change. So knowing all these things that I just explained, and I could go on and on about the impacts we're facing and the adaptation that I feel like me and my family and my community are trying to make every day. It shouldn't be a surprise, and maybe some of you have heard this statistic. 80% of the world's biodiversity is managed, protected by Indigenous peoples. And I'm actually proud to say that I'm one of them. Thank you. My community, our little village also is the headquarters for a national park, Yukon-Charlie Rivers National Park. Beautiful, beautiful country, goes through the heart of my people's land, where my ancestors have lived for thousands of years. Proud to be from there. I go to a lot of the fish and game management meetings, the public land management meetings as a tribal leader and advocate for many years. Recently, I met one of the new superintendents of our park, and I said, "Hey, so where are you from?" And he said, "South Carolina." And I was like, "Oh, well, how long you've been superintendent of our park?" And he's like, "Oh, about 6 months." "Well, have you been in the park? Have you been to my community?" He only was in my community for half a day, which actually isn't even in the park. And so he has a great education, probably a master's degree in some sort of something. I don't know exactly. But I know my land. I know in a 100-mile radius, I lived on those lands. Our family only had dog team and canoe for transportation for many years of my life. I still mush dogs on our traditional lands. And I know our country. I know when we have a new bird song. I know what certain weather means and how it's going to impact so many other things. Everything's so connected, how it's going to impact our people and our way of life. So today, besides adaptation, trying to heal from generational trauma and the impacts of colonization, we also have a lot of other good things happening that bring hope, even while we're facing food insecurity. We have youth. We have Indigenous youth across Turtle Island. I once had someone from Nat Geo said, "So where's Turtle Island?" And I was like, "You're on it." And they're like really scratching their heads. And I said, "It's North America. It's what a lot of Native people consider North America." But there are youth across Turtle Island that are rising up, much like our sister here. And they're finding their voice and their power, and they're telling their stories, and that gives me hope. I also find hope in the decades of our tribal leaders that have been fighting and trying to bring awareness to these issues, bringing solutions, lobbying in DC. Our tribal leaders often don't get the credit that they deserve, but they are the warriors on the front lines, and they are also investing in future generations. There are so many amazing projects throughout Indian country that could use some support, but one of them is really building our own climate scientists, creating educational paths for our youth where they could take over the management of that national park. Our own land managers, our own fisheries biologists, things of that nature. I also get hope from the indigenous knowledge holders, the elders that I spend time with and listen to. Our elders hold a lot of knowledge, and they may not just jump up and say it and speak like, Auntie Jane over here with so much power and such strength in voice. But so many of our traditional elders that might just lead a very simple life hold knowledge and knowledge from within our indigenous languages that needs to be captured before it's gone. These teachings hold solutions to a lot of the problems we're facing in this world. Another thing that I see in our communities that are part of the solution is also language preservation. Through boarding schools and colonization, our languages were beaten out of a generation before me in my community. And there was once a time where these children, they said a word in our language and were caught, they were beat or hit. But today, my mom is getting paid for teaching our language. I'm running out of time, but I want to leave you with a couple of things. I want to encourage you, and I know that a lot of us come from diverse backgrounds and experiences, but I really want to encourage you to somehow forge that relationship to where you understand that our land speaks, to have those observations in the natural world around you, and to actually really listen. Nina Kai Hodak. I think it's also important that each of us really evaluate our power and privilege in these spaces, and also evaluate in what ways could we support indigenous-led solutions and bring them not only to the table, but to lead the conversations. That's going to be key. And bringing just one indigenous person to a setting, to a room, that's not going to be just checking that box. We need to make sure that it's meaningful, that they aren't tokenized, that they're able to lead conversations and lead with our solutions, and that there's mutual respect in that. I also want to encourage people real quickly to eat local. It's really important. Even if we look at packaging in our stores that says sustainably sourced, I can tell you about what we're experiencing in Alaska. The salmon, the king salmon and the chum salmon that swim up the Yukon River that I live on, that I grew up, it was 50% of our diet and 40% was caribou and moose meat. That salmon has been in a decline for 2 decades, and our tribal leaders, our elders have been trying to bring attention to it. And of course, it's wholly and completely managed by the state of Alaska with no indigenous representation on their fish and game boards, by these other game and fish management structures that totally not only disclude but absolutely shun any indigenous knowledge in these spaces and decision making. But there is a fishing industry in the oceans of Alaska that is labeled as sustainably sourced, the pollock industry and the cod industry. And the reason I'm telling you about it is because I see it everywhere. It's the McDonald's filet of fish. It's the fish sticks in school lunch menus. It's the breaded fish that you can find just about everywhere. And that food source, the method that they're catching that food source is also catching all of the salmon that are bound for the Yukon River that are going to spawn, and they live in an 8-year cycle. They spawn, die, their fry go out to the ocean, grow up, come back, spawn, die. That's our food source. We catch a small amount of the total amount of fish that swim up that river. We have been banned. This is the 6th year that we have been banned from fishing salmon as indigenous peoples on the river. Meanwhile, the trawling industry that has bought and paid our politicians and the members of these boards, these lobbyists have, and our government officials are allowing the trawlers to catch everything in its path and throw away and waste all of the other fish besides the pollock and cod. So they're wasting our salmon, millions of pounds, and throwing it out. Crab, the crab industry is totally failing right now because of this. That crab gets thrown away. Halibut, rockfish. So many species are getting destroyed at the expense of this one bit of fish. So I just really want to encourage you guys to eat local. We eat local as much as we can. But my community, with most of our diet coming from the land, is now in a food desert. I consider it a food desert because we no longer can survive by what the land provides us. Even though our elders told us, learn your culture, learn how to live off the land, because one day we're going to have to return to that. But guess what? It's not the same anymore. The land isn't producing because of climate change. It's not caring for us because of these other impacts. The other thing I want to encourage you, besides eat local, is just live simply. One of the things that I realized with those values that I spoke about is, the people in my village, they live in little one-room cabins. A lot of them just have wood heat. The way in which they live is so simple, and they're so content that they don't really produce much of the, they're not creating this huge mess that we're finding ourselves in. While they're the least to contribute to climate change, we are getting impacted in some of the largest ways. And so with that, I want to challenge you to think about some of the values of my people, see how you can incorporate them into your life, into your daily living, and also into spaces where you might have power and privilege in the climate discussions. And with that, I just want to remind you, Ni na ke hodak, our land speaks. Masicho.
We at the Hollywood Climate Summit would like to thank all of our speakers in this program so far for giving us a remarkable hour full of incredible stories, inspirational speeches, and actionable steps towards change. And now we'd like to welcome our final speaker of this program, writer Adrienne Marie Brown.
It's great. Seed the soil within you. You drumbeat, you shimmering leaf. Listen to the sound of sunlight. Live a life that's worth your grief. Turn toward your life. What's coming now is all that's left. I'm Adrienne. I'm a storyteller, I'm a singer. I believe we live on an abundant earth, and I'm a future doula and a gardener of ideas. What I want to share with you today are little tastes of 4 ideas that I think we need to lean into in this moment. I write books, so it's very frustrating whenever I'm like, oh, how do I fit a book into a little morsel? So I wrote notes, because otherwise I would just go off. The 4 ideas I'm going to try to taste you into are emergent strategy, pleasure activism, transformative justice, and radical imagination. They're good ideas, I promise. We are caught in the world that someone imagined for us, where some of us are seen as superior and where the earth is seen as a resource that can give and give without anything being given back. We have to be in an imagination battle. We have to dream and remember and tell stories where all of us get to be home. So far, the only story we have mastered, the only thing that we have actually learned to recycle over and over again, is a story of death and destruction and dystopia. And I love it. I stay up too late watching it. But in the stories we need to start to tell of the future, we have to imagine all of us there with safety, dignity, and belonging. The problem is never the earth. She's always the source and the solution. So we have to remember how to be earthlings. So I write science fiction and visionary fiction on my own and in collaboration with others, with the lineage of Octavia Butler, who is right here from California, Black sci-fi writer. And if you've been reading her work, you know that she predicted that the shit really hits the fan in 2024. Here we are. The second idea I'm going to give you a taste of is transformative justice. Some talk about it as abolition, but I think the transformation is the part, going to the root and actually saying we need to change how we are. We live inside of interlocking systems of oppression. These systems only work because we uphold them inside ourselves and between us. Rather than canceling each other for every way that we're embodying the systems, we need to help break each other out of these systems and find ways to course correct for our country and our species together. When we turn on each other, the systems actually persist. They go underground. The rapists hide. The people who are polluting our planet, they hide, and they just go elsewhere. But when we actually heal each other and bring it all into the light, those systems become irrelevant. That's what we actually need right now. For the planet's sake and for our life on it, we need to hold on to each other and grow our souls, as Grace Lee Boggs taught us. I have a lot of mentors. I'm not going to list them all, but one ancestor I often call on is Todi K. Bambara. She said the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. Another brilliant artist, Audre Lorde, she taught us that there's a massive power in the erotic. So now I'm moving into the pleasure activism part. Now, I know that for those of us who are paying any attention to the climate, there's only terror and fear. And that's intelligent. That's because we're smart. We pay attention to science, right? So we've all been responsible for articulating how bad it is and how terrifying it is. And I think we've tried that and it hasn't worked. Unfortunately, when people are not paying attention, they don't want to be scared, and so trying to scare them isn't working. So we have to figure out a way to articulate a future that people can imagine themselves in, loving, and feeling satisfied. Now, that doesn't always mean sexual rewards for composting, although it can. It really can. I have created so many composters in my life. But it absolutely does need to mean telling stories of communities that are thriving, of overflowing gardens, of thick, nourishing soil and naked naps after shared work, sustainable lives, stunning hot tubs full of rainwater from a healthy sky. We have to grow the longing in our people for a world where everyone gets to experience the good, not just some of us, because that some of us is getting smaller and smaller, right? But we can imagine a world in which all of us make more and more joy, pleasure, belonging. These kinds of good feelings are not frivolous. They are actually measures of freedom, and they're measures of our collective well-being, of how we're caring for each other. So invite people to come feel good with you. Imagine a future in which your grandchildren feel good, not Mad Max. I mean, I love Mad Max, but that's not where I want to live. So the fourth idea is emergent strategy, which is, I think, how do we get there? Emergence is, as articulated by Nick Obolinski, is the way complex patterns and systems arise out of relatively small actions. We have been trained to make 5-year plans and try to make grand gestures, and often they don't work. The plan goes in the drawer and nobody changes. We even change the policy, but we don't change our behavior. Emergent strategy is saying 1 cell will split and become 2 cells, will become 4 cells, will slowly emerge into the city of Los Angeles, right? These things happen whether we want them to or not. We determine if we can do it with intention. Change is inevitable. We decide which changes we are going to be in. Right? So, oh, that was a good line. I said, okay, we're gonna say this line. I didn't say LA. I said bustling communities where our cars move the highways like blood cells and we have lungs that breathe like trees. That's better than just saying LA. So we have to get good at facing reality and then imagining beyond it. We have to get good at adapting with intention. So far, we've gotten really good at reacting, and our political landscape for the last 10 years or so has been constant reacting to crisis. So now we're starting to think in only urgent, short-term ways. We have to remember how to think 7 generations. I was so glad for Jody sharing that. We have to remember how to think long-term and non-urgently, even in urgent conditions, because we have to make solutions that are not going to work just for us for 1 year, for 4 years, right? We have to think long-term. How are we going to make a world that our children's children's children can play in? Okay? We have to shift from lonely and unnatural hyper-independence to healthy, boundaried interdependence on a shared earth. We have to understand that justice and freedom and sustainability don't just naturally occur. There's not someone else who's just going to handle it for us. There's a non-linear cumulative process of us taking responsibility for our lives, us taking responsibility for shifting culture, for shifting policy. We have to trust that there's not going to be one way or one agenda or one answer. This is the saddest thing. I've done movement work for 25 years. I was a facilitator. In every meeting, it would be everyone trying to convince each other that their one thing was the one thing. We need all the things, right? The healthiest ecosystems are the biodiverse ecosystems. That's the same for us. And you don't see oaks out there being like, ooh, ostrich, you're being a really bad oak, right? Mushrooms aren't out here trying to feel insecure because they're not ferns. We have to each occupy our lanes, occupy the work that we're meant to do. That means that some of the work is electoral and some of it is direct action. Some of it is organizing and some of it is art. And none of it works on its own. So don't talk any kind of badness about what someone else is working on. Stay in your lane. Do what feels comfortable for you. Maybe you'll try electoral organizing like I did, and you'll realize that they are not paying any attention to us, and you'll get in the streets and get arrested, and you'll do something else. But no judgment, whatever works for you, right? So it requires intention. Right now, we can't afford to get distracted. And it's not a given that we'll have a livable earth for even one more generation right now. There are multiple genocides unfolding. Genocide is a climate issue. War, bombing, mass shootings, none of this is good for the earth. This forced migration of war is not good for the earth, right? So our country is the most out of alignment with the future right now. We have to be humble. We are used to being the ones who export the solutions and tell everyone what to do. We need to learn to listen to the global south, to our indigenous communities, to people who know still how to live with this earth. I have a podcast called How to Survive the End of the World. I'm kind of obsessed with this. I want us to make it. And over again, the answer that we hear is that community is the way. Community telling new stories, love stories that center the earth and the people on it. I'm inviting you to join me to tell these stories in every way you can, to tell them to everyone you can, from your grandma to your kid, to someone you're making a film for, to the person on the bus. We need to become evangelists for this future. We need to fall in love with it. We need to know we need to make it inevitable. I love you all. I'll see you later.
Thank you so much, Adrienne Marie Brown and all the speakers. Oh my goodness. So that was so inspiring and so motivating, and you're probably feeling all these beautiful emotions of like anger and passion and energy and optimism. So here's what's going to happen. Okay, we have a 10-minute break, and we're which is what is amazing. Anytime you feel inspired, 10-minute break. But then we're going to come back, and there's going to be a presentation by Probable Futures. There's some of my favorite last year. I love them so much. We actually did some work together. Okay, and that presentation is going to inform a workshop we are going to do together. Okay, so we're going to end with some hands-on community building, putting ideas into practice, and we're going to take all this energy and emotions we're feeling, all this beautiful feelings, and we're going to put that into action. Okay, and I want to make one thing clear, because I know it's a 10-minute break, and like the Probable Futures presentations, we're going to start with that. And the workshop is based off of that presentation. So try to be on time, because my fear, and if I were in your shoes, I'd be like, 10-minute break. Yeah, right. Who's that guy? And then you might arrive late, and then you might not have that much context for the workshop. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be as clear as possible. Okay, I won't take any more of your time. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you so much, and thank you, speakers, again. What an incredible session. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here at the Hollywood Climate Summit.